Yeah, so just to bring you guys back up to where we were.
Oh, maybe we should do introductions again. I'm sorry.
Okay, go ahead. I'm Soleil. I'm an educator at Hanford Mills.
Yeah, I'm Justin. I'm education coordinator at Hanford Mills, and I'm used to be a reenactor, so did a lot of stuff with old stuff.
I'm Sarah. I adjunct at Hartwick. We're,
Sarah's my
we're
fiance.
engaged.
Yep.
Yeah, we're here.
I'm Amy. I'm a retired teacher who volunteers at the Teacher Center.
Hi, I'm Samantha. I'm a teacher at Milford.
Teaching what grade?
Well, I'm currently teaching sixth and getting moved up to middle school social studies. So,
Hi, and I'm Aaron Sorensen. I'm the director here at the Catskill Regional Teacher Center. I am so glad that you guys are here. And then we'll quickly go through you guys on the screen. We'll do Ashley first.
Okay, we're reintroducing ourselves.
Yes.
Okay, well, I'm Ashley. I'm a teacher in Fostertown in Newburgh. Work with Dual. I'm the English part of it. Don't ask me about Spanish, couldn't tell you. I'm currently working on my master's to be a school guidance counselor, and that's my story.
All right, thank you. And Kylie?
Foster Thomas, my CT, and yeah, sorry about my job.
And then Chrissy, you weren't here last time. So
I wasn't, sorry. I was at a retirement party for a coworker. And I was the one that was actually the host. So
oh yeah,
got a little crazy. My intention was to be there, but then it just, I don't know. It just got a little crazy. But I'm Christy. I'm also in the Newburgh School District. Actually special education at the high school, Newburgh Free Academy, in a life skills class. So all of my students are alternately assessed.
Oh, cool. That's what I used to do.
So at Hanford Mills, we travel out to a lot of different schools and we teach a lot of different age ranges. The program that we're about to share pieces of serves all of those age ranges from about K to upwards of about sixth, maybe seventh grade, depending on the school. So there is a wide range of what we can do with this program, but to build off of what we had last time, just to catch Christy up, there was artifacts that we were bringing in and discussing kind of the relevance of what artifacts are, how common they can be, and then what kind of histories and stories that you can tell. We were focusing mainly on how interesting they are to us as an adult. Today, we will be talking a little bit more about how to get kids interested in them, and then also how to kind of steer children towards the way of thinking that we're kind of exposing ourselves and the kids to here. Normally, when we are teaching these activities, they are after school activities. So there is a demand for a lot of excitement to be able to keep their attention. They are very usually ready to go home, and they usually have all of their energy kind of coming up for this exciting time. So if we want to be able to, like a lecture, for example, then we have to be able to snag their attention rapidly and consistently. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. The first thing that I normally start off this activity with is a bit of a mystery, because normally if you can catch them off guard with something, what are we trying to do? Oh yeah, just in case. I can bring it up. So we will pass around an object, and I'll get this as close as I can without it blurring. But this is the object that we will pass around. You guys might recognize it. It is, as you might be able to tell from the video, completely translucent. And so you can nicely see through it, but not see through it as well as if it was completely clear. Now, I usually will have a couple of teachers that are jumping up and down to spoil what the object is. But it is very, very uncommon for children to have been exposed to these in their current lifetimes. And that is kind of where we're going to get started with discussing what is, oh, thanks. What it is that we're really trying to get across to the kids. So I will pass this one around. And the reason I chose this object is because it's very solid. So even though it is glass, it is hard for them to break. And it is very heavy. And so, you know, you have something that's very tactile and very weird. And that is a good attention getter for them. It's something they can really put their hands on. It is okay to give them access to artifacts that may be more delicate at like a distance. But I think that giving them something they can hold in their hand is a great way to start them off and really kind of get them focused on what they're doing. So we pass this around a little bit and try to get some ideas. I've heard all kinds of things from ice cream cones, candle holders, a little police light that you put on your hat. Yeah, but in reality, it doesn't matter what it is at first, because the first thing that I'm going to try to introduce them to is kind of the concept of like what a fact is. In reality, this is an object. It does a specific thing. It has a history, and all of those things are facts. And we generally, depending on how young that the group is, will try to teach them the word observation. Now, as we get down to maybe kindergarten and first grade, we kind of introduce the word, but don't necessarily try to get them to retain it, but at least get the concept that an observation may sometimes be factual, but it is not exactly the same thing. What you notice about an object may trick you, but it could be true that you are observing it. And there's more ways than just the eyes to observe things. For example, I'm observing that it's very heavy. And some things you just kind of can observe with a general knowledge. It's probably pretty obvious that this thing is like some kind of glass or something like that. And most kids get that right off the bat. If they can see, then the kids can see that it is some sort of bluish green, and they will argue about that, which is nice. Those observations are true. Sometimes I will ask them to give me observations about its age. And that is when they will say, it's old. And it's old is an interesting observation because it is not an observation. It is a guess. And that is what we mainly try to set them up with. Is the whole point of this activity is to kind of give some distance between facts and guesses. Now, observations can be somewhere in between. Observation is, you could say that it looks old, and that could be a factual observation. And those observations are just something that we get with our senses. If we can feel it, if we can see it or hear it, that is some sort of observation. And we can say that it looks like something, and that can be factual. But it doesn't mean that it's true. I could have tricked them. I could have made one of those yesterday, and I often bring up this idea of like, what would it take to trick them? And would I need to cover it in dirt? Would that make it look like it's older? There's lots of things that make it seem a little bit tricky. And that's often what people are doing when they try to fake an artifact, is that they're adding some of those tricky observations in there to make it look like something is what it really isn't. But in this case, it is also a fact that it is old. It's been studied. It's been with Hanford Mills for a long time. It's a real historical object, and it is old. So even though it's a fact, it's not something that we can for sure observe. And if they get testy about that, then I usually will try to catch them in some sort of a wager. We often have like little prizes, like stickers and things like that. If you give one to a child and you say, that's yours, but if you would like, we could bet that this is guaranteed old. And if you're right, then you could keep the sticker. And if you're wrong and it's not old, you have to give that sticker back to me. Is that a wager that you would like to make? And they usually will step back because they want to keep the things that they have.
So, and just to chime in on it too, you know, the purpose of this activity, it's a visual thinking strategy activity. It's an introduction to critical thinking, and it's trying to draw that parallel between primary and secondary sources and research. Mm-hmm. So the older your kids are, the more you can talk about that explicitly. You can say, you know, this is a primary, you know, object. You're making factual observations. That's your primary research. And if you want to extrapolate what the object is, that's your secondary, that's your educated guess. It's an intro to historical analysis in that way.
Now, for the kindergartners, they are still currently just hanging on, waiting for the point to show up.
Yep.
They do have the heavy object, and they're excited about that. And the next part really starts to drive home this idea. We tell them what it is. It is a
Insulated.
yes.
Yep.
It basically blocks electricity from going down to the ground, so it insulates to make sure that electricity stays on the line. And that we bring in that it's about trains or other things that are relevant to Hanford Mills. But the main thing is that we explain that the reason why they haven't seen these is because they're just not used the way that they were historically. And that once upon a time, these would be very common, and the kids that are their age would know what these are just by seeing it. Yeah, they would have seen them around quite a lot. But kids these days don't necessarily see them. And we talk about how distance over time can change how well that people know about things. And that's when we start to talk about their things. I introduced this concept that if there were people 1,000 years from now that came and saw their PlayStation, that they might not understand what that is. And I also, if they're younger, I start to bring up other kinds of toys and things that are maybe more relevant for them. But I want them to start thinking about that distance. And the way that we normally do that is that the next activity, we bring up the idea of aliens from outer space. So if an alien from outer space was to look at this thing, they would think the same thing the kids do. I have no idea what that is. It's glass. It might be for ice cream. We don't know what the aliens might think. But the aliens from outer space would look at a lot of things that humans have and wonder what it is. Now, this is where I try to bring out some really, really common items. And my number one go-to is a nice cup of mac and cheese. Especially school children have seen this little thing over and over again. And so it's a very common item for them. And I go around very confidently. And at some point, I will introduce my friend, the alien here. And the alien from outer space, I will also pretend to be an alien from outer space with them. And we will take a look at these human objects. And so this first one, I introduce and I start to ask them what it is. I let them kind of yell it out because they think that it's simple. And then I explain, yes, it's actually a ceremonial instrument. So it would be a drum. It could be a maraca. It would allow them to do all kinds of like music. And the kids, of course, immediately will start to freak out. I think that one of the things that starts to engage trust with children is when you are willing to engage in play and pretend with them. And like they know that you're not an alien from outer space, even when they're in kindergarten. But they even up to 7th grade, they are immediately willing to engage with the mental shift of treating you like you were an alien from outer space and being angry at you like you are an absolute fool. And so they will say like, no, it's mac and cheese, it's food. And then at that point, you can have a little bit of foolery. I usually will mispronounce. I will say something like, oh, so this mac and cheese that you have here, I don't think that you're truly right, because I do actually have proof that this is not a food product. You see, here we have a human food delivery device. And so with this delivery device, humans would be able to feed each other. And so if you had eggs or some other sort of human food, it would go along the food delivery device. So that this was truly food here, then it would feed our alien friend. And I'm afraid, no, it is obviously proven to not be food. And at this point, it is anarchy in the classroom. It is fairly upsetting, I think, for a child in a fun way, for them to know something that you don't know. I think it is rare for them to be treated that way with adults, to like have a sense of like frustration with adults that they just don't comprehend what is so obvious to the children. And this gives them an opportunity to engage with that. Obviously, they want to explain what a tape measure is. They want to explain what the mac and cheese is. We give them a little bit of time for that. And maybe if they're older kids especially, we start to engage with that concept of like, how would an alien ever know that? They might tell us that the mac and cheese has words on it, but the alien can't read the words. The alien might not even know that they are words. If you didn't know what these letters were, it might not be easy to differentiate between a drawing and letters. It might just be zigzags on there that are trying to be fancy. There are hints that you can use with like a measuring tool. An alien from outer space might see that there are regular intervals. And maybe the regularity of that interval, that they were very smart aliens, they might be able to put together that these lines might mean something. And that usually goes somewhere with kids. Now, back into the fantasy, I think we usually bring up at this point that all of this talk about food is making me fairly thirsty. And so we will usually have, by at this point, we will have hidden a spritzer of water somewhere around the room, especially if the teacher has like a cleaning area of cleaning products. We'll have set it amongst the cleaning products, and we will go and retrieve it and then say like, oh, this is a human water delivery device, and this is how they would get a drink. And of course, the kids are trying to make sure that they're saving your life and making sure that you're not, going to spray something. If you can introduce it that it was ours, you can go a step further, and we even will like spray each other to get a drink. It'll be like very refreshing. They love clowning. And so I think it is the surprise that a teacher will actually go through with something like that you would actually like let your friends spray you in the face, that will keep their attention. Now, in a classroom setting, you may not need that much demand to be able to hold their attention. If it's early in the morning, they may be ready for a school lesson. But depending on the demands of the classroom, you may have to have a little bit of engagement of that kind of silliness to keep them going. I will normally at this point introduce what most kids have seen as a sponge, and I will pierce it with a earring. And then I will say, like, this is another piece of kind of the food service for humans. They will wear it as an earring, and I will go ahead and like clip it in. And so at this point, it seems very obnoxious to them. And then I will have Justin again spray me with the water bottle. And suddenly there is no, sense to the nonsense. And I will say, this collects all of the extra that did not successfully spray in my mouth, and it gives me a little snack for later. And they love that. Anytime that you can kind of bring in some kind of random surprise, it will engage them further. But at this point, they are seeing like that this is getting more and more absurd. And you want to take it to that level of absurdity, because soon we will pull the rug out from under them. Like, they are making fun of these aliens from outer space because of how ignorant they are. And while we've poked some holes in why that ignorance is there, we'll then say, fine, okay, if it's so obvious for the aliens to be able to know what things are, then why don't you tell me what this is? And the room goes silent, because this is a weird thing. And immediately they will have some guesses. The guesses are inevitably wrong. I think egg holder is like the number one thing. They love I guess because of the holes are about the size of an egg. They always imagine that for some reason people want 5 eggs. I'm not sure where that comes from, but yes, it's not an egg holder. And so I think that this thing, or having something that you feel is strange enough that the kids might not recognize it, can juxtapose what they were just making fun of and kind of now their own situation. If you are separated from an object by enough time, you've essentially become an alien from outer space towards that object, if that culture is different than the culture that's in front of you. Now, 1,000 years can make those things very different, but you can even have just 100 years and an object can seem extremely foreign to us. Now, as adults in the room, we can probably make some educated guesses about this thing. Do you guys have any?
Some kind of candle holder.
Candle holder, I like it. Yeah, candle holder.
So to take it at the 1,000-foot level and kind of relate it to what we were doing last week, you're taking that critical analysis and you're basically encouraging them to engage in it. Like, they can critically analyze this because they know what it is. So we give them a starting point, and we, by hamming it up, by showing that we're aliens, we sort of bolster their confidence in doing things like this, and then it makes this more
Well,
engaging.
the tag won't help you.
Okay.
Yeah,
Is
the
this
tag is a
Is this
found
something
in
that you
collection
put
tag.
at like a dining table?
Yes, yes,
Mhm.
it is. So we will arrive at that point too. I leave this one typically a little bit of a mystery to leave that up on the table, and we will work our way towards this. Now, we say that these kind of things might all be found in an archaeological site. And sometimes you can gain a contextual understanding of an object by gathering the other things that might be at the same site. So sometimes we dig things up and the stuff that is surrounding it
But then I
will
don't know
help
what to do
explain.
at the dining table.
Now, all of the things that we're about to show all come from the same place. So this right here would be in the same room of the house that we would have found this in. And how about this guy? Is it more obvious?
Oh,
Yeah, it looks
No.
like it could be something like a grater.
no, that one I think
Yeah, you think you know it?
Potato.
that's what I would have.
Yeah, yeah. It's not just a potato smusher. This is a good old French fry maker.
Yeah.
It does make good old McDonald's fries. So yes, this is a nice French fry maker. Usually kids can work towards this thing, and it is textural. One of the things that's nice, you know, that we have kind of an edge on as Hanford Mills is that we have a museum full of objects that the kids can touch. But we will be talking about in session 3 about how to access some of those things, not just from museums like ours, but also finding them for your own on the cheap. But giving them a chance to touch it and then see how this thing interacts also lets their imagination play a little bit, and then lets them get closer and closer to what some of those guesses are. And then usually I swing them a softball. So some things, even though they are 100 years in the past, have not changed a whole lot from the same objects that we use today. So this is something that I would say most kids tend to recognize. It is the same object that it would be, you know, today we still have our potato mashers and we still recognize them as such. Our handles are now plastic, so there are some little like changes, but a masher is a masher. This was proven very effective, and so it stayed. And so now, if they were able to solve the French fry question, and they were able to solve what this thing is, we start to talk a little bit more about what room of the house are these objects coming out of. And of course, then you start to get closer and closer to the kitchen. Another easy pass, if they're kindergartners, is to get something that they've seen. This is a familiar object, even if it's kind of a hand crank version of it. Usually they've seen electric versions of this. It takes them a little while to figure out how to use it on their own, but some of the mystery of the tactile nature of it also gives them a little bit of interest. But yes, this is, you know, obviously some sort of beater. And then we get into a little bit weirder.
Oh, I have one of these somewhere here in my house.
So
These are really
this
good.
right here is usually guessed to be a nutcracker right off of the bat because it's the closest thing that the kids have context for. It would be a very big nut if that were a nutcracker, but it is the same idea. It does crush. And then this object in particular, I usually bring in for a specific reason. I let them pass it around and I let them tell me what it is. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to pass this around. I'm going to give you each 15 seconds to tell me what this is. 15, 14.
I don't know. I
9,
haven't modified my
8,
thinking.
7, 6,
The first thing I
5,
thought of was for ice
4,
cubes, but that doesn't make
3,
any sense to me.
2. Well, it's a good guess. 5. Oh, 15, I guess. I should start.
Some kind
5.
of like, I would say like some kind of like juicer for like
Okay, okay.
citrus.
Pass it along, pass it along.
Yeah, juicer.
I would say some kind of tool.
Yeah.
But what?
Well, we're in the kitchen, so I don't know.
Yeah, I could see it.
Is it a form of like a nutcracker?
It is very similar in its structure to a nutcracker.
Could see putting a lemon or something.
Yeah.
think
Here,
that's
let me
like
borrow.
you
I'll
said.
I'll get it over to you in just a second. But you can also probably see it's fairly large for a nutcracker. So it is a
Oh, yeah, now
nutcracker,
that's
but
up
kind of
close.
jumbo. It's hard to tell over the camera. Did you want to take a look? You got
Um,
10 seconds if you
I
want.
feel like the only thing I can think of is like if you're gonna use it to crack open like some sort of shellfish.
So this
Oh,
is,
that's a good idea.
yeah,
Oh, like
yeah,
a
yeah.
lobster cracker.
The
yeah.
reason that I passed this one around in particular is because even with adults, nobody tends to look at it and say that it says Ice Master right on the handle.
Oh.
And so you were. It is an ice cube crusher essentially. So a lot of times there are clues beyond the shape itself. And I will usually be nicer to the children than I was to the adults. And I will start to get them to look closer and closer. Like ask them probing questions like, where would you go for hints? And then we start to talk about things like, for example, on this, it says Hemingway on the side. And I ask students, what does that Hemingway mean? And like, what do you think? What does Hemingway represent, do you think? Exactly. And that's usually it is a brand. And it's usually a pretty fast guess for kids. Brands are on a lot of objects now. If you were to go to the TV, you would find a brand. If you go to the air conditioner, you find a brand. And so the idea of a brand being on the side is very common sense in today's culture. If you go back a little bit further than that, those brands are not going to exist the same way. And there might be a time in which we go forward and the brands don't exist the same way. And so we have this little narrow bit of time where right now we can think about words being on there and it might tell us what things are for or who made them. And that might give us a better chance to research them and look them up. So I got a little bit more. A little deal.
No, I was talking about brand, and then so it's interesting to think that the branding in the past is
Simple.
almost always words, and now they're much more picture oriented, and yet we talk about the importance of reading and the act, but
But
doing more
heuristics.
visually.
Yeah.
Stick a
But the
QR
shape,
code
the
on it.
font, those things have become more and more important in
Mhm.
brand image. Yes. So we have one of these little guys right here, and it has this little wooden piece that comes with it. Any takers?
Yeah.
I have a plastic one at home.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so if you've been to the Olive Garden, right?
Yeah.
They will usually, the closest thing that kids can usually come up with this is a Parmesan cheese spreader for like pizza.
Yeah,
Because you've
right.
seen that in like an Italian,
Right.
that's not far off, Particularly this one would be for like any kind of herbs or something that you could place
Spices.
inside there. And yeah, spices, and then crush it inside there and spread out some garlic. I show them like how it would be clamped on the side of the table to try to get them closer and closer to it. As they start to see some of the peripheral pieces, that might give them more hints and context as to what it is. This one is interesting enough because it has moving parts. And so if you were to set something on there, it might be able to move the thing around a little bit. I don't think we have anything. Normally I have a little bit of Play-Doh that can hold it down so that it's halfway down. Yeah, we'll see. Well, it's actually not that bad. So what do we think?
Can I see the other side of it?
Yeah,
It is a scale, and kids usually get that pretty quickly.
yeah, if you can
But-
see the numbers on it, then that usually clues you into the idea that it is a scale, it's true.
But it's for something
what?
specific.
Very specific.
Oh, it's for fluids. Maybe.
Here, let me hand it over to the camera for a
I was
second.
just gonna say
Maybe
that,
not.
yeah.
All right, so here is our scale. And then if you press down on this mechanism, it changes. You can see the different weights that are on there.
Is the back weight
It'd be a lot.
You mean this thing?
Yeah,
It's a counterweight.
yeah, so but you can't adjust it.
Nope, nope. You want it to be very standardized. So the biggest hint that I usually will give for the kids is the shape of the scale itself, because it is very well shaped for the object in which it intends, which is to go right here on the placement.
It's an egg?
It is exactly right. And there's the thing is sometimes you think about the shape of objects and what we can relate them to in nature. And oftentimes, if you relate things to nature, you can kind of figure out some kind of human direction, especially the earlier you go, the more that shapes tend to come from natural shapes.
Why do
So-
we want to know the weight of an
So
egg?
this right here would be used for selling your eggs. You've seen how there are large eggs, jumbo
Jumbo-
eggs. There are
jumbo is standard now.
medium eggs.
Not to get ripped off.
Those different eggs have to be weighed on a scale like this to determine how much egg content is in them. And so
Mhm.
if it is heavier, it may become a jumbo egg, and that's what's sold. But during this time, you would have to weigh out those eggs. So that way your dozens were reasonable, because you may have very young hens that are laying very small eggs, and you would be cheating somebody if you gave them all of those.
Those
So-
eggs must have been very precious if we're gonna spend that kind of time to weigh an egg.
I mean, even though now it's automated, we do still weigh our eggs. They are still separated out by weight. It's still important
But
to
even
us.
when I go to like a local farmer,
Yeah.
they're giving me whatever egg,
True.
and I don't really care. That is
I
saying
think that's
this
true.
egg
and
is
that-
really precious.
It is also true that no longer are you going to a farmer to achieve the like best price.
Oh, yeah.
Like
right,
you are
right,
no
right.
longer going out there to try and make a deal and make sure you're getting your money's worth. So you're willing to accept a farmer's eggs, even if they gave you all baby eggs. And you're paying a little bit of a premium for that kind of, to the farm direct. Whereas these folks this would have been the cheapest way they could possibly get eggs.
Amazing. Like
So-
labor costs alone today would
Yeah,
be
I
like crazy for that.
Mhm.
And then there's the last one. A lot of times I will have one teacher who is a snobby know-it-all, and they will tend to constantly, they will tend to point things out for all of the children. And so this one isn't so bad. So this one tends to throw some people and children off. It looks kind of like some sort of syringe. I will,
Is it still in the kitchen?
yes,
Mhm.
we are still in the kitchen.
We are
No, is
thieves.
that?
But the syringe little, whatever you want to call that, this little thing here goes through the hole completely. And so pushes all the way through. So if you want to try and take a peek around.
Put your finger in there.
I always feel like the top of like an orange.
Hmm.
Coconut.
It's a good guess.
Oh, I think I have a guess.
What is your education?
Well, let's
Yeah,
see
you
if
can let a
anybody
couple.
else. I'll write it down.
Going back to
It
your
appears
days,
something.
Yeah.
your medical days.
I have no idea.
That's all right. That's all right.
No idea, so-
No guesses?
I have an idea.
Okay, what's your guess?
Something
What's your
that's
guess?
put in Here.
Is it a cherry?
What's your guess?
Take a
That
pin.
was
Put a cherry in it.
Yes, yes, it is. It fits
That
a
was
cherry.
Oh, wow.
A deep hitter.
So there's a lot of labor now that we are not used to.
And so how
Um,
did you figure that out?
I was just watching the way that, she held it.
Yeah.
And it looked like it pierced something, but it also looked like this kind of cupped a little bit on the
Mhm.
inside.
That
like
is the
Yeah.
design of
And I
it,
was
which is what
thinking
you
of,
were
like,
saying
yeah,
earlier.
And the people that are here at
And
the
then at the
table
very-
also have a decent advantage against you guys because they can
And at
can
the
see the
very
size.
end, I don't know if it will show up on the
You get it?
camera.
Oh, yep.
No, I don't know. But
Rotate?
at the very end, you can see there's like a line in the
Oh.
middle of it.
that catches the
Okay.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
cool.
I would have guessed the stem, but maybe it's the.
That's cool though.
So, and then some things are completely gone. This
Oh.
right here is not really guessable. But it is a kind of scissors looking device, but it has a scoop instead of a blade
I did have one group of kids get this
Really?
without
Yes.
any hints.
without any hints.
I-
What?
I-
Let's see.
All
I
right,
don't-
we can
Let's
do
see
this.
that.
We can do this.
I don't trust Justin on that. I don't understand how you could possibly guess it.
Still in the kitchen.
It looks like a.
Still in the
It is.
kitchen.
So
Is it like a pitter of some sort?
It
It
is
looks like
like
an
that.
olive pitter, like where you'd put the olive in the center.
Olive
Squeeze it,
bitter.
and then it would
It
pop
could
out.
Yes.
It does not pit, but it is similar in its function.
And I guess that's the disadvantage of being on the TV, because you can't see that this is a scoop, almost like a spoon. You can't see.
Oh,
really
okay, yeah.
well. And the handles are interesting too. They're kind of like the old fashioned
Well, it reminds me of like
scissor handle.
tongs.
It's like, but they're actually bent in, like curved in. What could it be? What could it be? It's like an extruder of some sort. Doesn't make sense either. Yeah.
So again, relating back kind of to last week though, each of these objects, even if they're ones that we use today, can invite kids, especially older kids, to think about what was valued, what was consumed within kitchens. We were talking about eggs being kind of precious because we're weighing them all out. Clearly, spices mattered a lot because we have this wood block that's meant to drive in here so you can get every last little piece of those spices. So we can talk about the social value of some of these things. And as a hint, this has a lot to do with that as well.
Yes, this definitely has a lot to do with value and something being very extremely precious and wanting to get every last bit of it that you can because it's something that you would only have very rarely.
Is this like a teaspoon or a tablespoon?
Like part of me wants to say like some kind of meat, but
Well,
I don't
something
feel
has
like
to
it
be
means
held in the scoop there.
Yeah.
It is what is one,
Not
what
a tea bag.
was at one point one of the most precious, commonly eaten fruits that was out there.
Fruit.
strawberry.
Cherries?
Not cherries, that's this right here.
Oh, okay.
No,
Dates.
Much bigger,
big fruit.
bigger.
Big.
Pineapple.
Yes.
Yeah.
How
So
is that a pineapple?
this right here was meant to get every single individual spike pulled out of the pineapple so that you could then eat the pineapple in its entirety.
How did your kids get that?
I don't know.
I don't know how
It
they
was
got
weird.
that. I don't
That
understand
is
that.
really
It
weird.
was weird. One kid looked at it and goes, "It looks like a pineapple scale shape." And I was like,
Wow.
yeah. Lucky guess probably, but it was
I
impressive.
would never guess.
They were fifth graders.
So some of these things, we even just our amount of time, we've lost the context to be able to grab that. And that's kind of where this comes in. So now we've gone around the kitchen. We have this, and you're right, it sits on the dining room table. Now, one of the hints is if it was in the middle of the dining room table, what would be the function of it being able to do this? Candle holding is now out because there's no reason why you would need to get any closer to a candle.
Is it for like
Is
spices?
Is it a lazy Susan like condiment?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Spices?
It would hold spices, it would hold oils quite
Little
especially.
quart,
Yep.
little jar.
There would be specific glass vials that would be designed to sit into it.
The
And you
technical
would-
term is a caster,
Yes.
is what these are called.
Yep,
Yep.
this is a caster holder, and the casters would be the individual bottles that go into it.
How big were they?
The caster bottles would be about the size of your hand.
These would have been especially, put out for like appetizers, pre-dining meals. So, your salads and so on. It would have oils and dressings and
But this, I'm gonna see if I can get it shown on the camera here.
that's
there
probably
is
1890s.
There's quite an
1900.
ornateness that is on here. I'm gonna try to get out to focus. Let's see if it'll do it. But you can at least see the designs.
Oh,
So
right.
you might
I
not be
didn't
able to see
catch
the
that before.
specificity, but this is a pretty, this one is actually lower end for how much that these can be like engraved. But that etching that's in there, would be something that you would kind of want to show off. This would sit at the middle of your table and it would be worth hundreds and hundreds of dollars. So that way that you could show off kind of your opulence.
Would it have been made of silver? Or?
Mhm.
That one is silver plated.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then the
Plated.
plating would
And
have
very
different
much not
designs applied.
polished.
So,
Yes.
yeah.
It needs to be polished, but
I kind of like the look of it now.
Yeah, but it's also nice because like with us not treating it especially well, it's easier for us to justify letting kids toss it around.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
there are a
What's
lot
at the
of
top
fingerprints.
of it, or is that just like how you hold it?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a handle.
Mhm.
Okay.
That's what kind of tripped me up because I thought
Looks
that
like the
those,
top
there
of a
like
lamp
indentations there, and I thought something would have wrapped
Well,
around
first
in
it
there, but
was
nope,
kinda like
it's just the
oil
handle.
lamp thing, and I was like,
And why
what
would
are
you
trying to
make the
talk about
handle
it?
like
Had a
everything else
bottom
is pretty ornate, and
cutlery.
the innocence kind of boring
Yeah.
to me.
Probably just,
Very interesting.
yeah.
Now, do you have like an estimate of like the wealth of like a family to own something like that? What their wealth would be?
I can speak to that. So this one being silver plated, rather than obviously solid silver. And it's tin under the silver plate, not pewter. So if it was pewter, it'd be a lot heavier. And then this type of design, this is a middle class piece. It is. Wealthier families would have much more decorated ones. But yeah, this one is fairly nominal. That's probably why the museum has it. It's meant to go in our farmhouse, our historic farmhouse.
Okay.
And that was a middle class farmhouse.
We
So-
do have some catalogs that the Hanfords and their predecessors had that were that will show like maybe like angels and things like that that are like more ornate up here.
Oh yeah.
And so it goes up almost endlessly.
Yep.
You know,
This
depending
one
on-
is a pretty simple one as far as they
Yep.
go. So,
but it still imitates that wealth, you know. And so when we talk about this thing, we bring the kids back to that idea of an alien. You know, when they were looking at this, they were essentially that alien from outer space. And the problem is that you have to have some kind of an authority like us to be able to say whether your guesses have any merit or not. Sometimes, like if we were to go and find an artifact and there was no basis for that artifact, we wouldn't have any way to ask another, authority what that is. And so it becomes tougher and tougher to try to piece things together. And a lot of times you just have to use context and we just make our best guesses.
Mhm.
But those guesses are a lot of what artifacts and archaeology in general really are. And that kind of shows this thing about archaeology. I often will then end this little session with letting the kids think about their own house and try and come up with one item. If you guys want to try this, you can. Try to come up with one item that you feel like, keeping in mind there is no electricity, there's no context other than this item. What would be the strangest for an alien that was visiting, and then holding that object for them to try to guess what the purpose of that object is?
What do I have in my
I have often said that our bathrooms, the way we have our sinks now, like if you don't have electricity, I think you'd be completely baffled of what that is.
True.
Mhm.
Yeah, the electricity in the bathroom, even like if there was no longer like active plumbing, you would have all these knobs everywhere and switches everywhere, and it would seem like you went to the bathroom to fly a jet. Like there's so many controls. That's a good one. I often get the kids bringing up the toilet. That's like a consistent.
Yeah.
They're like thinking about somebody trying to understand a toilet.
Yeah.
The only thing I can
Or
think
the
of,
sinks,
Yeah.
especially the sinks when you put your hand
Yeah.
under it. No
Yeah.
electricity. Like, what are you doing? Like,
Yeah.
the only thing I could think of that's weird in my kitchen, but it's really not, but it's like a meat tenderizer, because all of them
Oh.
look different and like the way the sides are. completely
Yeah,
different. Meat
that would-
tenderizer.
Now, meat tenderizer will be really hard for them to like get the context for. Like,
Yeah.
You would mash something. They probably understand that it's a tool. It might be obvious that you're gonna like you have a handle and an acting,
Yeah,
thing.
'cause
So,
like the one side is different.
but the
than other.
specificity
Yeah.
would be very strange.
A
Yeah.
meat grinder, the old kind.
Oh yeah, with the whole thing in there.
You
I
have to
mean,
clamp
the
it
one
on.
advantage is if they stuck an alien finger in there, they would
Find out.
they would
Yeah.
get an
Find
idea
out.
pretty
Yeah.
quick. Yeah.
a lot of those one-time use things, like the ice cream makers that they make now, or the
Yeah.
slushy makers, like, again, no electricity. Like, what the heck is
Mhm.
this?
I think also if they are like,
Terms.
let's say they have a different physiology than we do. Let's say they look like spiders or something. And
Oh,
they,
gosh.
and they see a couch. There's not really like an easy way to understand why this little scoopy thing is everywhere.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah.
A roll of paper towels,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
toilet paper.
So
Even like a coffee
No,
maker.
not
is
in the
weird.
kitchen.
see, and now like I see a little bit of like furrowed brows, and that is exactly the kind of thing that like is very, very easy for the kids to catch on to, is the weirdness of the fact that they've never like taken kind of a step back from
Think
the
about that.
objects in their own personal house. And of course, anytime that one kid says a single suggestion, every kid has to say a suggestion. So then you also get this group participation thing. It's like, proliferating it. And, when you talk about like a TV and things like that that won't turn on, So it's just like a weird glass box filled with like different chemicals and things like that. Like a lot of those things. And how will they know the difference between a TV and a microwave? And kids love like when you make them laugh about something like that, like having them watch the microwave waiting for it to turn on. And like pointing out the silliness and arbitrariness that we have of like the objects we do.
Mhm.
A Morse code.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah, telegraph key.
telegraph key,
Yep,
yeah.
yep.
Now, we start talking more about like context. All of these being like near a kitchen helps create the context of what you're finding. And depending on the program that we're using, that context continues through in a couple directions. These are the two most popular that we go through. I like these in particular because they are cheap and extremely effective. One, when kids see Play-Doh, they know they're about to have a good time. They instantly will want to do whatever it is that you're asking of them. Now, we will usually introduce the idea, the concept of archaeology. And then I will talk about, like, let's say that you were digging up something very expensive, like a vase, and you are digging down. If you were using like a shovel and going as fast as you can, would you be preserving history as best you could when you found that vase? Like, obviously, you want to try to be careful and you want to be slow. And all of that introduction is just kind of to trick the kids into accepting the next parameter of the game. Because I have hidden a bunch of objects inside of this Play-Doh. And so there are a bunch of different artifacts, including some like old coins from different eras and things like that, that are hidden deep inside this. But the conceit is, if kids were to just take their hands and go like this, they would find it immediately. And so to add some kind of difficulty, but especially novelty, often difficulty presents a novelty to kids that gives them the challenge that makes them want to do things. If I tell them that they have to just use tweezers and a little stick to get all the things out of there and they can't touch the Play-Doh with their hands, suddenly, no matter what their age group is, they become incredibly engaged. As long as you present them the concept that what it is will in fact be a challenge, then they're very, very into it.
Like
And
that.
so this right here is a challenge for them. A little bit less messy. This one in particular was not for archaeology, but was for paleontology. This one is for looking for dinosaur fossils. We are looking for cheap ways. You know, the Play-Doh costs $1. But for us, especially at Hanford Mills, sawdust is free. And so when we would take popsicle sticks and then hide them amongst the sawdust here, and they are the same exact color. And so for them having to engage with this and then taking their brushes and trying to brush aside things and then trying to find these little popsicle sticks, eventually they'll get out enough of them. For the older kids, we have these little individual popsicle sticks. And then for the younger kids, we have great big popsicle sticks that are easier for them to locate. So you can kind of cater it to the age group. But then you can see there are different pictures that are on these. And these pictures, depending on how many that you find, will start to match up. And so when they can start to match these like fossils up, then they will have like completed fossils. This is a little crinoid doodle. And they will have all these cutesy little fossils that are from New York State. So they're local things they might recognize from their own creek. And then they'll put together all these different things. And we will use, like in the fossil one, crinoids in paleontology can be used as what's called a keystone fossil, which means that anything you find around certain crinoids will tell you what point in time that you're in. And that's kind of the same thing that's happening with archaeology. I will have a coin in here that is from Brazil and is from 1850 or something. And so I'll ask them, like, you've got all these things that are inside here. Some of them are beads, you won't know. But is there any way that you could tell me what era that the stuff that was put in there is from? And that will engage them to look at their items and to think a little closer. Like I will tell them everything that's in there was all from the same year. How could you possibly know what year it could be from? And then if they need help, especially if they're kindergarten, I will let them know like something that you have might also have words. And those words will let you gain closer knowledge to what's in there. And then, we may have to help them through the date depending on how far they are in their reading journey. But that starts to contextualize the things that are in here the same way that this is. And that context is a great way to look at artifacts. When we were talking about artifacts for adults, we were talking about the opposite, how you can take an artifact and then start to learn context from it and use a greater context, like thinking about war and thinking about pop music and thinking about the effects these had on society. So all you're trying to do at kindergarten level is start to make the connection between artifacts and context. And then that gives you a chance to start to platform those knowledges one after the other. And then the next years that they get shown, especially if you already have 6th, 7th grade or up students, you can start to layer that and start to talk about those contexts in a reverse sense and start to get one artifact and then start to pull out all kinds of meaning. Like what we were doing with this, when we were determining that this meant that the eggs were more valuable, you were willing to put more labor into weighing them and things like that.
A great way to
draw it back out.
To do that with older students too would be to either have these Play-Doh containers themed to, say, a certain room, or to take all these objects that they've just figured out the identities of, throw them all at them and say, tell a story. They'll get very creative with it, and they'll have somebody named Bob mashed this and did that. But if they can tell a story to it, they're linking it to that context. They're, making guesses, extrapolating stories out of it. I talked about last session, that's what good museums do. They tell you stories through things. And if you can get kids thinking like little curators, they'll learn more through objects than they ever would otherwise. So it's really worthwhile.
And even for like medium age kids, which is what we consider like 3rd and 4th grade, you can start to do that with just any 2 objects. Like, why would someone own both of these? Tell me a story about how they came to own both of them. And then their little brains will automatically start to like come up with reasons. And even if those reasons are about aliens or very, very wrong, you're still getting them to go in the right direction of that kind of context-driven glance at objects. Well, I think that's about it for this activity in particular. If you had specific questions about that, with some of these things we made ourselves. But these artifact pieces here, we also got from the museum. And again, that is what we'll be talking about next time, is how to get some of those specific objects for yourself and what kind of things to look for as well.
And we have different programs on topics like this for different environments. I just wrote one of these meant for field trips. So having large open spaces, kids can do like a grid pattern search, like they do at archaeological sites and so on, and pick these things up off the ground and then bring them back and tell stories about them. You can be interactive in lots of different ways depending on your space.
Kids moving in their classrooms.
Exactly, and age groups and so on. And the purpose of these after-school activities is to be infinitely adaptable, because truth be told, we don't know what we're walking into when we go to those programs.
And that adaptation is, something that we face enough that we've got a little bit of that built into our programs. And if you were ever seeking out like something in particular, like these programs, we would be happy to share that like program guide itself with you guys as educators. If you reached out to like hanfordmills.org, you could find Justin on the website. I don't know if you're up there yet.
I'm not, but my email is just justin@hanfordmills.org. Feel free to send me an email.
Or you can find me, Soleil, over there. I am on the website already. And just send us an email and ask us for archaeology programs and things. I would be happy to share with the kind of write-ups and things like that we use.
I think back in the day, we used to have the trunks, remember? Like if you could have like thematic trunks with this kind of stuff in it, like.
Yeah, we have to, we are basically limited by the fact that some crop programs are about 28 minutes. And so we have to make sure that we are being concise. But if you had a day with your students where you could, especially with the younger ones where they don't change classes, and you could build this up, you could use a huge amount of things. You could use something like trunks. Each of them are themed to a different part of the room. And then you could build like a larger narrative in
like
there.
Every unit, you could start out with this trunk of artifacts, right? That would be the coolest thing.
That'd be,
And then you could end it with what artifacts should we put in for next year, right? Like,
Well, ninth grade, because I gotta teach 7, 8, 9, so we have to focus on evidence-based and artifacts.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I teach 6th grade now, so we do a lot
Yeah.
of like archaeological.
You could, if the science, identify rocks,
yeah.
you could get different kind of rocks, instead of just looking at them to identify, you pick them out of
Yeah.
something.
Sediments.
Yeah.
Yep, and that's the great thing is there are different kinds of museums. There are different kinds of, we talked about the variety of ways we can define artifact last time. Basically anything with a human connection, but you can have specimens too. And you can do the same thing in science classes, but with specimens. And that's like where this fossil stuff
I did
comes
a
in.
timeline game, so like I threw up like different at the beginning of the year. I threw up like different things from ancient times, and we did like
Yeah.
a timeline.
Yep.
And then they redid it just recently.
Yeah, can do that with objects too,
That'd be
you know.
fun.
Yeah, as a geology major, I would probably veer away just from rocks in particular because of the amount that geologists tend to put the rocks in their mouth as one of the tests.
Yep.
That's not always something that you want to encourage in children.
Do that for bone too.
Yeah, you got to see whether it's gritty or salty. You gotta lick the rock. That's just the rules.
Yeah.
That is the rule.
But thank you guys so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. We look
And
forward to
with-
seeing you
Well,
next
thank
week as
you.
well.
Thank you.
So much.
Thank you. See you next week.
Yeah.
Mouses.
Amy said